Imagine this. You've built a career, maybe you've raised a family by now, you've carried responsibility for decades. But lately something feels off. The routines that once gave your life structure now just feel heavy. The days blur together, the dishes always mount, the laundry piles up, the bills keep coming. The cycle feels never ending and a bit meaningless. So you catch yourself wondering, is this it? And then out of nowhere, you're knocked off balance by an obsessive crush. Your world snaps back into color. It's intoxicating, it's destabilizing, and it makes no sense because you thought you were past this stage of life. So you tell yourself things like, I should know better by now. I'm too old for this. But Limerence doesn't care how old you are. In fact, in midlife, it can hit harder than ever because this is the moment when your brain, your body, and your sense of identity are all more vulnerable to being shaken awake. That's why it can affect you so much harder in midlife than it ever did in your 20s. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we spend a lot of time talking about how we reclaim our lives back from the grips of childhood trauma, from emotional dysregulation, and from anxiety. And we do this ongoing exercise because we want to live our lives on our own terms. I hope you stick around. Before we get into it, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. And if you're finding this content helpful, please give it a like. It really helps the channel grow. Somewhere between our late 30s and 50s, many of us hit a period of deep reassessment. If you haven't been very introspective before, you're certainly tempted to be at this time in your life. This is the time when we start asking questions like, is this it? Is there anything exciting still coming? Is this the life I want to live for the next 20 years? Have I made the right choices this far? Am I even where I want to be? Maybe the career we've worked for so hard doesn't feel as satisfying as we thought it would. Maybe we haven't reached the levels of achievement we were hoping for. It doesn't mean we've done something wrong. Most of us don't reach the absolute heights we hoped for when we were younger. We do the best we can. But when we're younger, we always think we have road up ahead. We have time to get further. And as we get to that further place, we start evaluating, where exactly are we? At the same time, maybe our relationships now feel more like routine than like real connection. We do life together, we raise kids, we pay the bills, we organize endless schedules, but maybe we don't talk to each other as much as we'd like to. Maybe we've stopped going out on dates. Maybe we've gotten a bit complacent. Some of us are dealing with empty nests. Our children have left and started their own lives, leaving empty holes in our own hearts. Some of us have gone through hard breakups, divorces, or complete reevaluations of our identity. So this midlife self-audit can create a deep, deep sense of searching for meaning, for excitement, for proof that we haven't yet reached the end, that we're still here alive, that we are still desired, that we can still desire as a verb. And when we're in this state, the limerent object can step right into that gap. Suddenly, they're not just a person. Now they're a symbol of possibility, of all the things we haven't yet achieved and all the things that could bring us back to aliveness, all the things that could remind us that there's still life to be lived and opportunity to be grabbed onto. And that's why the limerent object doesn't feel like just a person. They feel like a lifeline you're holding on to with desperation. Physically, our bodies may be a little softer. Maybe we're not as lean as we were in our 20s, but many of us are at the top of our sexual game when it comes to desire. In midlife, our bodies are still fully capable of producing huge spikes of dopamine and noradrenaline and oxytocin, the chemical cocktail that drives limerence. On top of that, we might be dealing with hormonal shifts like perimenopause or menopause or testosterone changes. And those can also make emotional highs and lows even more extreme than they were in earlier years. Your brain is still perfectly capable of getting addicted to the high. And if we've been in long-term routines, or if our life feels stagnant, our reward system can be especially sensitive to novelty, which means when that limerent object steps into our lives, the high of limerence feels like a lightning strike, drilling straight into the concrete grayness of our daily life. And often limerence takes us so much by surprise that our brains don't even care this might cause massive disruption or upheaval. The brain just registers the tasty reward and it wants more of it. By the time we reach midlife, most of us have been running a mental script in the background, a script that lays out how our life should look or how we had hoped it would look. Career, home, kids, where in the world we want to live, the kind of relationships we want to have in our lives, the kind of lifestyle we want to have. Whether we stay close to our extended family or we move across the world, how stable we are financially and how stable we are in our closest intimate relationships. Some of us have a very conscious version of this map. For others, it's unconscious, but either way, it's still there running in the background like a constant tally. Are we there yet? Whether or not we've achieved this list by midlife is another matter entirely. And if we're caught in the heat and intensity of a limerent episode when we reach this stage of life, all of these laid out plans, they come under threat. They can be spoiled overnight. If we're single, whether because we've remained single or we haven't found a long-term partner, meeting someone who brings us into the heights of intense romantic love can feel like a once-in-a-lifetime chance that we just can't pass up. But if we're already in a long-term partnership or marriage, meeting someone who makes us feel this way can create deep, painful conflict between desire and loyalty. Many homes have been turned upside down by the intense longing and obsession of limerence. But make no mistake, in midlife, the stakes are higher. We know we're no longer 22 with unlimited do-overs. We know that every decision now carries bigger consequences. And every choice now has consequences that we can't necessarily bounce back from. And because of that, the pressure mounts. The pressure to latch onto this intense, beautiful romance in case it's the last chance at finding our soulmate, the person we're destined for. That kind of pressure doesn't just create longing, it intensifies and magnifies the obsession even further. By midlife, we've spent decades being responsible in all kinds of ways, as parents, as professionals, as caretakers for other people in our lives. And that often means we've gone through long stretches where we've had to put ourselves on the back burner, just simmering there tepidly. Not really feeling ourselves, not really able to pay attention to our own wants and needs. So when a limerent object steps into our lives, they might awaken parts of us that feel long buried, like our need for playfulness and humor and laughter, our own sexual energy, maybe once burning bright, now just a flickering flame. Our creativity, buried under layers of responsibility and productivity. Our spontaneity, crushed under the weight of long days filled with predictable routines and mundane work. So falling into the deep pit of limerent obsession isn't just about finding this person. It's also about how we feel when we're with them, how much of our own needs get awakened by their presence. And it's that part, the rediscovery of ourselves, that becomes intoxicating and impossible to let go of. Watching our identity expand again from whatever tiny box the routines of life have kept us in, seeing our identity unfold again with new and interesting possibility, that in itself can become the addiction. especially if we've been stuck or pinned down in one role for years of our life. That's why limerence feels less like falling for someone and more like falling back into yourself. The you that has been buried under layers of life and responsibility and routines. Unlike the limerence of our teenage years or early 20s, limerence in midlife carries added layers. It can become a sort of a portal out of whatever is weighing us down. And what weighs us down at this stage is both common and deeply personal. It can be failing marriages or stagnant, uninspiring long-term relationships that long ago lost their luster. It can be stalled careers where we feel like we're showing up the 10 hours of gray, meaningless labor day after day until the end of our days. It can be burnout from caring for the people we love, our children, our spouses, our elderly parents. It can be emotional exhaustion from grief or loss, which so often hits us hard at this stage of life. The fantasy and the intense euphoria of limerence, it offers not just escape, but almost a new mission in life, something to look forward to get excited about, a storyline that we can invest our energy and our potency into just to feel alive again. And that's what makes limerence in midlife so much harder to let go of, because giving it up feels like giving up the one piece of life that still feels electric. And many of us at this point fear it might be our last chance to even feel this way. By midlife, we know life doesn't hand us unlimited opportunities. Limerence taps directly into that midlife FOMO. It's not just the fear of missing out, it's fear of missing your last chance. So, yes, some of us buy a shiny new car. Some of us buy houses we can't afford. Some of us change our wardrobe completely, wearing clothes we last tried on at 17. And some of us, we fall madly in love, only to realize later we've gotten stuck in an incredibly sticky episode of midlife limerence. The thing about limerence at this stage of life is that it often comes with a really compelling story. And the story usually sounds something like this. If this is happening now, at this exact moment in my life, when my marriage feels stagnant, or I've just moved to a new city, or my mother has passed away, if it coincides with these other heavy and meaningful events, then maybe it's meant to be. Maybe it's destiny. Maybe this person is the key to unlocking the second half of my life. And let's be honest, many of us secretly hope that the second half will be somewhat different than the first. Not always because the first was bad, although sometimes it can be, but often simply because sameness fatigue has set in and we're tired of the same. But here's the thing. This compelling story is what psychologists call narrative bias. Our brains fit the limerent object into our larger life story in our own minds, making them feel indispensable to that story. How could I possibly step into the next phase of my life, the one that's supposed to be better than the first, without this person that is the key? The last thing I want to do is lose my key. The limerent object starts to feel like the answer to the second half of what we've been longing to step into. But is any of that true? Not likely. It's most likely narrative bias rather than destiny. And your brain is a master storyteller. And the more beautiful that story feels to us, the harder our brain works to resist giving it up. So, can we step back off this ledge? Is there a way to take a breath, to take in the scenery without feeling like we have to give up on life? I think so. First, we have to ask ourselves, what exactly am I getting out of thinking about my wonderful magnetizing limerent object? Am I getting excitement out of it? Am I getting a sense of validation? Am I finding a renewed sense of possibility, of opportunity opening up in my life that hasn't been there for a long time? When we ask these questions, it helps us to separate things out, right? To separate the limerent object from everything else. Imagine the limerent object like a sticker that's been slapped onto your midlife. At first, it feels like it's part of you, like you can't shake it loose, but you can. You peel it back, unstick it, and you start to see it for what it really is. Because it's certainly not just about them. It's also about what they represent for you. And once you unstick it from your life and you figure out what this person represents, you can find new containers for your own needs. If you don't, the obsession will keep convincing you that this one person is the only container you will ever have. Unless you want to blow up your life or take a strange new turn and start anew. And of course, that's your choice. You can very well do that, but you have to do it with intention. But if that's not your intention, then the work is to find new places for those needs to live in. If it's excitement you're craving, then start something physically or mentally challenging. If it's validation we're needing, reconnect with friends, join new social spaces, pick up hobbies that let you show up as yourself and let you feel seen and appreciated. If it's possibility you're hungry for, reevaluate your career or set tangible goals for the next 12 months, the next 2 years that you can achieve step by step so you can feel that sense of moving forward again. And if you want to stop focusing so much on the limerent object, create fantasy boundaries. Decide for yourself when and where you'll let yourself think about this person and when you absolutely will not allow it. Half an hour a day is probably more than enough to fantasize about the what if life with that coworker you're dreaming about. Outside of that, bring your focus back to the rest of your own life and your own goals independent of this person. And finally, rebuild your identity outside of the obsession. Bring back or discover hobbies, styles, skills that make you feel alive without hinging on the attention or the reaction of this limerent object. Meaning, don't do it for them. Don't do it to impress them. Do things that are just for you and you alone. And try hard to remember the long game. Limerence in midlife can be a shocking and destabilizing wake-up call, one that can literally bulldoze through your life like a wrecking ball. But it isn't necessarily about the limerent object. It may be about what your current life is missing and what parts of yourself are asking to wake up again. If you use limerence as a mirror instead of a map of what moves to make next, it can mark the start of a second chapter that is truly just yours, based on what you've decided you want for yourself. And this time you can build it without hinging your happiness on one person, without the emotional volatility and the instability of chasing this one limerent relationship. If you decide this is the one person you absolutely want, then by all means, you are free to choose as you please, but do it with your eyes wide open after carefully considering all the realities of the situation you're in. If you treat limerence as a mirror instead of a map of where you need to go, you have a much better chance of figuring out what the second chapter of your life is supposed to be about. Midlife limerence feels so intense because it collides with self-reflection, with shifts in our identity, and with our deep need for renewal. The temptation is to think this person is the answer, but more often than not, they're just a spark. They're a light that shows us the changes we've been needing to make for ourselves. And when we make those changes, we don't lose the spark, we just stop needing the limerent object to hold it all for us, to be the representation of what we've been missing. The person isn't the answer. The spark is, and that spark belongs to you. And that might be the best part of this. If you want to dive deeper into limerence, I've linked my limerence playlist below. In it, I cover why we choose the limerent objects we choose, how to break free from the fantasy of limerence, and why we crave validation so strongly in limerence. I hope these videos help you shine a flashlight on your own path ahead. And if you enjoy this kind of content, please like and subscribe. They really help this channel, and we can keep exploring these topics together. Until next time.